All right, it is my pleasure to welcome back to the show from the Sons of UCF live show. We bring in Trace Trylko. Trace, good to talk to you again. Been a while.
It's been a minute, Jeff. I mean, how long since they were playing football? And now we're 100 days out as we talk today from the start of the 2023 UCF football season in the Big 12. But it's been a while since we got together.
Yeah, well, it's always good to catch up with you, my friend. And yeah, speaking of that, 100 days away from football, and they unveiled the new gold helmet today. I don't know if you got a chance to see that.
I saw it. I am pro gold, black and gold all the way. I'm not a big Citronaut guy or the blue uniforms that they wear. So anything you're bringing out that's black or gold, I'm all for it.
And they look sharp, so it's all good, and little thing to get you thirsty for football. That's it.
That's right. How about that? Dropping that 100 days out, a little uniform, helmet talk, in the ho-hum days here of summer as we get, as we anxiously await moving into the Big 12.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, while still members of the AAC, UCF baseball taking part in the conference tournament over on the west coast of Florida. Of course, you are fresh back from today's festivities out there where UCF wins in a walk-off by Andrew Brate with the home run. Boy, that's exciting stuff to get through that first game. They were cruising right along and had a tie game going to the bottom of the ninth, or top of the ninth, rather. And wow, good stuff.
Yeah, and for UCF, obviously, you stay in the winner's bracket. It's a double elimination tournament. If you lose, you got to come back the next day. Also benefiting UCF is they had the first game as the 4 seed, so they played at 9 a.m. over in Clearwater, near real South Florida, or fake South Florida, right? At 9 a.m. game, which gets completed about noon. They're off now until Thursday. They play the winner of the next game, which goes extra innings between ECU, the 1 seed, and South Florida, the 8 seed. And South Florida prevails. Both ECU and South Florida burned through a lot of pitchers. UCF with just the 3. They had, in UCF's case, the 3-0 lead. Cam Leiter, the freshman, all-freshman team in the AAC, with his longest outing of the year, goes 9 Ks. They're ahead 3-0. They left guys on base, though. And you know how the AAC is with these, high-scoring games. And, you'd like to bank more runs if you're UCF and give up a run in the 8th, a 2-run home run in the 9th. But you mentioned it, Andrew Brate with the walk-off home run in the bottom of the 9th. And UCF gets to enjoy a little time at Clearwater Beach as they await now their next opponent. And again, you play from the winner's bracket, so your week continues a little bit longer.
Yeah. And of course, obviously, the Knights would have to win the tournament in order to get in the NCAAs. Give me your thoughts on the overall season to this point. To me, it's been a lot of feast or famine, a lot of inconsistency. They score a lot of runs, but pitching has been difficult at times. What is your overall assessment of
that sums it up really well, right? The inconsistency when they had the stronger pitching, the bats were quiet, and then the bats come alive and they're losing games, 14-11 or these sorts of games, right? Which you can't have, which is what made Cam Leiter's outing on, in the AAC tournament, that first game, so critical. He goes deep in that game. They don't have to burn through a lot of pitchers. UCF is going to go as far as the pitching goes. The offense is likely to step up and score, but you can't have these situations where you're in football type scores. They played Wichita State last week in the final home series. They gave up a ton of runs in the 9th. They have to win it in a walk-off 16-15. Okay. And this was a 12-11 game between ECU and South Florida. So you see that it does happen. But again, if you're the one that scored 11, you feel good about your chances until you give up that 12th run. For UCF to only give up the 3 and just enough offense today and the walk-off home run to win. But it has been a mixed year. I don't think the pitching has turned out quite like they'd hoped. And you'll see good outings from guys even out of the bullpen, and then they can't seem to get anybody out. If they can put it together in this conference tournament and win it, then they can get to the NCAA tournament. But that's what it's going to take. They piled up too many losses. The RPI is too low. They're not going to get an at-large. So it's Clearwater or bust, but they are capable of doing it if they could just get reasonable pitching. The
Mhm.
offense would seem to be able to carry them, but it's good ECU takes that loss in the first game. You know, ECU is going to be tournament bound as winners of the regular season in the AC, and they're ranked, and so that's not a question. You want to steal a bid here, but keep them in the losers bracket and let somebody else knock them out. And now UCF renews. We didn't think we'd see it again quite so soon. The war on I-4, which I traveled early this morning to make it out for that 9 a.m. start in Clearwater. It's USF and UCF in the Thursday game at 1 o'clock. So opportunity now for UCF to advance. And again, South Florida burned through some pitching today in that extra inning affair.
Yeah, another round with the cows. How about that?
That's right.
And it's interesting because, you know, and you are saying the one key word that's vital in postseason: pitching. That's how you're going to get there.
That's right. And if UCF can again get just some reasonable pitching, then they have a good chance here. But you can't find yourself in 16, 15 games. You're burning through too many guys. And this is, you got a championship game is Sunday. So you know how many days you got to make it. And that's why being in that winner's bracket, taking the day off on Wednesday, using 3 pitchers. Cam went 7, which means you'll see him again if they go deeper into the weekend, and 1 inning apiece from each of their relievers, which means that they'll be viable again soon. So for UCF, it was a good Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, give me your thoughts on Coach Greg Lovelady. So, like in my opinion, he started off well, made the team advance a little bit, but it seems to have been leveled off, and the program does not seem to be advancing, at least like I think it should. Do they have to win the conference tournament for him to remain the coach at UCF?
Well, only athletics director Terry Mohajir knows what the answer to that question is. You mentioned what have they done lately? 30 plus win seasons, but a fan base that expects championships, winning an American, going to the NCAA tournament. And that hasn't happened since his first season in going to the NCAA tournament. I happen to be of the belief that each of UCF's coaches have earned the right to coach into the Big 12, recruit into the Big 12. So if you're asking me, I think that's what should happen. I think they've been around long enough for this mix of coaches that's what they've earned. And we'll see what Terry Mohajir thinks. Is the program ascending? It's hard to imagine seeing the quality of play in the Big 12 that if UCF is having to win 16, 15 game against Wichita State, no disrespect to Wichita State, but it's murderer's row in the Big 12 and you're going to be facing a lot of good teams. It's going to be more challenging. They have to step up their recruiting to do that. And that's why a change at this time, making a change at coach, you're rebuilding going into the Big 12. So I would keep Coach Lovelady and give him an opportunity to show what he can do in the Big 12, but we'll see what Terry Mohajir thinks. I do think the longer they're in Clearwater, it makes that decision maybe a little bit easier for Terry Mohajir.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because as the athletic director, he hasn't had that situation where he's had to fire a coach yet, at least for performance reasons. So we haven't, it'll be an interesting time because we haven't seen coaches really, let go. They've left on their own. It would be kind of something we haven't seen in a while.
Yeah. I mean, you got to go back, right? A ways. Danny White, he came in, he said he wanted to see teams do well academically, players do well academically, stay out of trouble with the law and contend for conference championships. And then he made moves, tennis coach, soccer coach, he made moves and changed some of the coaches. So we have not seen that kind of move from Terry Mohajir, and curious to see whether he wants to make that sort of decision. He's got to replace volleyball coach Todd Dagenet, who is moving on to a fledgling professional league with an Atlanta franchise, this after a long tenure at UCF. And then under maybe some interesting circumstances, the very successful rowing coach, Becky Kramer, said that she was stepping away and they have begun a search for that position. So he's had to make some moves in that regard, but, it's a little bit different when you have to make a move in terms of a termination.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the Big 12, of course, I think, the softball team looks the best poised of all our programs going into the Big 12. Coach Cindy Ball Malone has done such an amazing job with this program. 3 consecutive 40-win seasons, making the NCAA tournament on a regular basis now. This to me is a very exciting. It looks like this core group is going to be together going into the Big 12. So there's a lot of great opportunity there, I think.
Yeah, I think there is some buzz around softball, and the way you said, maybe the most Big 12 ready. You look at the roster being built, 16th ranked recruiting class, this last one that's coming in, core of the team returning. That players will come and go in the transfer portal. It exists for softball too, though we think of it mainly for football and basketball, but it's also for softball. They play a challenging schedule, which sets up their RPI, which allows for the NCAA tournament berth. And you may look at their record and say, well, but they didn't do very well, especially early against that tougher competition. But it made them battle tested. And if you watched over the weekend, they were 3 seed at the Tallahassee Regional. They were right there with Florida State. A little bit timely hitting, maybe a little better defensive play. That's what separates a team like UCF and that knocking off a Florida State in their own ballpark, right? So you've got to play not perfect, but pretty darn close to perfect to knock off a Florida State. You saw what they did when they beat South Carolina in that first game. They couldn't get past them in the second game, but the future is very bright for softball, and there's a lot of energy around the program. The success has certainly opened a lot of eyes. People have discovered softball the last couple of years. And this has been a program over 20 years that has been very successful at UCF, but now on a different level. And it's an NCAA tournament level. And now you won't have, like they faced with Memphis. They finished 3 games with Memphis. Memphis, a very low RPI that dragged down UCF's RPI. You don't have those sorts of low quality teams in the Big 12, night in and night out. Everybody is good. So your RPI will remain strong. And I think they're poised well, especially with a core group, a younger group that has now gone through this experience. They get to go into the Big 12, having been in the NCAA tournament, and that run for some of them last year when they played Oklahoma. So I think they're well positioned. It's fun to watch UCF softball, and I really have discovered it more recently, always more casual, but I've gotten into it more, even so that I'll flip on a game that's, if I'm flipping through and I land on a softball game, I'll watch that. Yep. Even when it doesn't involve UCF, because it's exciting.
Yeah, it is fun stuff. And, you think about the challenges, they had coming into this season too. They graduated 2 talented pitchers. They kind of had to find their way there until, Sarah Willis stepped up and Joel stepped up and kind of assumed those roles. But that took a little bit of time through the early part of the season. So to me, that's, a great example of the coaching that goes on at UCF and how they develop players during the course of the season.
And when you mentioned Sarah Willis, Chloe Evans, also, these are 2 people successfully brought in through the transfer portal. And
Yes.
So Coach Cindy Ball Malone knows how to work that portal as well. And again, UCF will lose some players into the portal, but you want to bring better quality players out of the portal. And as she said in her post game following the loss that knocked them out, she knows what the roster needs to look like to be in the Big 12. And she's going to go person by person on that roster and determine, whether she thinks and her staff thinks that they're ready to be in the Big 12. So some difficult conversations in the aftermath of that loss, as she's already begun work on the next season and setting them up for success in the Big 12.
Yeah. And, you mentioned Chloe Evans, what a great revelation she was through the course of the season. I think, I'm kind of the opinion, Jada Cody, I think playing for Team USA, I kind of felt that kind of wore her down a little bit coming into this season because she wasn't as dominant. Still a very good player, but not dominant like she had been. And Chloe Evans kind of offset that with her arrival, and I think that was kind of an interesting dynamic with the team this year.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think all the talk about her having participated in that is that it was going to improve her game, and I don't think there's any question that it does help to improve her game, but. That's an interesting thought, maybe one to explore in the offseason conversations with Coach or Jada, whether there was some wear and tear over the course of the season. Remember, they're still college students, right? They're young. I mean, while they can bounce back maybe better than some of us, it still can be a grind.
Yeah, for sure. But lots of great things to look forward to as far as softball goes. And of course, as you talk about, coaches and situations like that, I know there's a lot of mixed feelings about Johnny Dawkins right now with the basketball program. And I always go back to the one thing, you know, it's like, okay, who are you going to get that's better? Because if you're going to replace Johnny Dawkins, I mean, it's not like these teams are poor year in and year out. They have some amount of success throughout the course of the season, but has he reached his peak at UCF? He reached his peak at Stanford. During his 7 years there. Sometimes you need that next guy to get to the next level, but as you mentioned, going into a new conference, do you really want to start from the rebuild side of things? Although with the transfer portal, rebuilding is kind of a
you're
constant,
all but
right?
rebuilding anyway when you're UCF. It is a very discussed topic. I think there's an expectation on the fan base's part that they want to win. They see what Big 12 basketball looks like, or they see the success that Houston has, right? As they go into the Big 12 with UCF, and Cincinnati's had their years where they've been strong. While basketball is one of the oldest sports, right, on the campus, hasn't had that level of success. I mean, you can make the argument that Coach Dawkins has brought them to the most sustained success that they've had. I think, as I mentioned with Coach Lovelady, that Coach Dawkins has earned the right to coach into the Big 12. Obviously, there was no change after the season, and you lose players to the portal and you pick players up. It's, you hear Coach Gus Malzahn, the changing landscape of college football, the landscape of college basketball. You're having to redo your roster every year, and that's challenging. The Big 12 is a different animal, though, and I kind of jokingly say to people, over under 5 wins in the Big 12. Maybe you steal something with a BYU, Cincinnati, and then you start to go, well, who else? A Texas Tech, maybe a West Virginia. There's no weak teams in this league. And I don't know that we know at this point, with a couple of scholarship spots still open, what the final composition of this roster is going to look like. It's some promising names have come in, but until you see what they do on the court, is it a Big 12 roster? We're going to find out, and how long Terry Mahajer, the athletic director, wants to stay with him. Obviously he's staying with him to make that move into the Big 12, but there's a restlessness amongst the fan base. You used an interesting phrase, is he the guy that gets you to the guy that takes you to the next level? But with NIL, with other things, most of those dollars seem to be directed to football at UCF. It's, it drives everything. Are there those sorts of dollars to attract a big name? And even if you put those dollars to a big name, and Johnny Dawkins, by the way, when he came to UCF, was a big name. I mean, he had success at Stanford. That is no slouch, right? And obviously, his reputation, his success athletically through the years.
And he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. So, and from all accounts, right, as much as we can get to know coaches, a decent guy, right? So who are you going to get? You're going to get a promising up-and-coming young assistant who then is going to leave you for more money, or are you going to get a reclamation project looking to boost their resume and rebuild their career, or you're going to throw a lot of money? Where's this money to throw at bringing in a top name coach? Because that coach is going to want facility upgrades. UCF is committed to those, but then they're going to start wanting players. And we know how this works. They're going to have to start throwing dollars to attract players. And why do you want to come to UCF if you're that caliber player, right? Mm-hmm. And you have all those other Big 12 schools throwing money, or other, SEC, what have you. It's challenging. I think the road ahead, I said to someone, enjoy this win that you're watching at home, because you're not going to see as many of those next year. Enjoy this one, because I don't know when, they'll have the non-conference schedule. So there'll be some opportunities there, no doubt. But just like this season's team, you bring in a bunch of guys, and while they have opportunity to practice over the summer, you still have to gel on the court in meaningful games, and that can take you a while, And so they're going to have to come together quickly to face that gauntlet that is the Big 12.
Yeah, I think where some of the frustration comes in is you kind of had hoped that after the the NCAA tournament team with Taco and BJ and Aubrey, that they would have been able to capitalize on that, use that to their advantage, but it hasn't sustained. I think that's probably where a lot of the frustration comes in.
I think that's a fair criticism, that you want to see it sustain, but realistically, and you followed the program for a long time, what is reasonable? Is it a postseason? Again, they made the NIT. I know it's not the NCAA tournament. What's for a UCF? What is reasonable in terms of making an NCAA tournament and postseason play? And when do you want to see? How often do you want to see that? I know you just don't want to get there. You want to make some noise. You want to win. Coach Dawkins won at Stanford, won NIT tournaments, right? So it's not as if though he hasn't won. But what is realistic for UCF as a basketball program? And that's a question I think that's going to be asked across the sports. We talked about softball kind of maybe being Big 12 ready, but you go sport by sport. What is going to be a reasonable expectation in that first year in the Big 12? It's often been said, especially of football, UCF can win a one-off game with Auburn in the Peach Bowl, but how would they fare with their depth in an SEC schedule? Well, we're going to find out about that depth for football and across all of these sports as they face high-quality teams in all sports.
Yeah. And the kind of my last thought on Coach Dawkins, like I said, if you tell me you want to replace the coach, I always ask, well, who are you going to get? Because that's a big multitude of options out there. And I look at this and I just, hope that, they have that it's not a complete bust the first season for basketball in the Big 12, because you want to be able to see the opportunities that will come from being in a bigger conference for your recruiting, for attracting your quote unquote free agents that we have in college
free
sports.
Agents. Isn't that, I don't know. I know it's the new face of it, but it frustrates me a little bit. But what is a reasonable number for you, right? 18 game schedule.
It's hard.
I think everybody, it's funny in football, 12 game schedule, and 9 games in conference, you'd say, wow, if UCF could get 6-6, they're going to make a bowl game, right? So, fan base sort of saying that a little bit. 9-9 in men's basketball. Oh my goodness. They're almost the whole league goes to the tournament.
Yeah.
All right. So that's why I'm kind of jokingly saying 5 wins, could they get to 7? They have played high caliber teams, but they're more one-offs. So what's it going to look like night after night after night,
Yeah.
But you take 9, right? I think you take 7 and 11 in the first year.
I think I would accept that. Yeah.
So 9, you'd be ecstatic. You take 7, and that's why I sort of say, can they find 5?
Yeah.
And then after that, they get to the 5, then let's shoot for the 7. But there's no more ECUs and South Floridas. And these are not games necessarily that have been slam dunks for UCF. They got swept with the team from Tampa last year. Who are they comparable to? Is it Oklahoma State? Is it West Virginia? Is it, again, Houston's coming along with them, and that's no slouch of a program. So,
and little school in Manhattan, Kansas that it seems to do well pretty well every year.
Lawrence, Kansas.
Baylor, Baylor won a national championship not long ago.
It's going to be interesting to watch. Probably different nights of the week than accustomed to in the AAC play, and different opponents coming to the UCF arena, and different networks and TV slots and things like that. Might not have to search for ESPN Plus for a Sunday noon game against Temple. Maybe some higher profile time slots and all that. So it's going to be exciting, but I don't think anyone in the UCF fan base wants to go in and be the laughing stock. They're going to want to see competition, be competitive. Whether that translates into wins, I don't know. I 9 it, I'd be ecstatic. I'd take 7, and let's see if they can beat 5.
Yeah. And of course, women's basketball, they had just a unfortunate happening of, the coach leaving, taking a number of players with her.
Taking a lot of players and coaches.
Yeah. And so, having to start from scratch in that regard. it's probably better that it happened last year instead of this year. It's for sure.
Yeah, I think so. Whatever growing pains and working things out that City of Messer has had to work through in her first season, and they struggled around a 500 record, a little bit of a win in the postseason tournament, opportunity to put her stamp on the program. But the Big 12 is no slouch in women's basketball either.
Yeah.
So it's the same equation, I mean, they have had success as a league. So, it's interesting. It's not obviously as high profile, not only as a sport, but on the UCF campus, certainly compared to men's basketball. But I agree with you. If it was going to happen, she's had a year, and she knows, having had other stops, high profile stops, what it takes to what kind of talent it takes to be competitive and win. Now, can Coach Dawkins, you name the sport, can they attract that kind of talent to UCF? That's going to be the big question. That's why I say with all of the coaches, let's see what they can do. They've been recruiting at the AAC level and some longer than that at Conference USA and so forth. Let's see what she can do. But she certainly, mixed bag her first year. Let's see what she can do in that first year in the Big 12.
Yeah. Well, as we said at the top, 100 days away from football. And, one of the most exciting things to me about the upcoming football season is I am glad that we have hired an offensive coordinator in one Darren Henshaw, because I was of this opinion when Josh Heupel was still the coach that we needed somebody to concentrate on the play calling. And I think this is a great step in the right direction.
If you believe Coach Malzahn is going to
keep his hands off.
Yeah. And I know this job has changed in the couple years since he took it. Right. And he is stepping aside to say, as he has, that he's going to focus more on CEO type roles and collectives and NIL and all that fundraising stuff. And I believe him in all of that. But he also didn't like when play calling was taken away from him at Auburn, and he was chomping at the bit. How often is he introduced as the guy that wrote the book on, high power offense? How much of it will be Darren Henshaw collaborating with Coach Malzahn? I mean, Coach Malzahn's not going to learn about a play watching on the sidelines, But it was interesting to see him during spring camp as he moved. Often earlier he would be primarily with the quarterbacks. This time, when we had those 10-minute, 15-minute glimpses into practice once a week, you saw him moving across the field, spending some time with the offensive line, moving over to the defensive side of the ball. So he's moved around. It is a change for him. We'll see how well he adapts when we get to real football in the season versus spring camp or preseason camp.
Yeah, and of course, the other captivating storyline that has surrounded UCF sports, not just through football but through baseball. John Rice Plumlee as the starting quarterback. I mean, I don't see any way he's not the starter going into the season.
Well, that's a difference over a year, right?
Yeah.
There was that. I don't know how serious it was. It certainly was the fodder for podcasts and talk and message boards. But that quarterback competition with he and Mikey Keene, and depending on who you talk to, there's Camp Keene and Camp JRP, and the belief in some circles that Coach Malzahn was always with JRP. But we saw what Mikey did. Mikey's moved on and into the transfer portal. Would have been interesting to see what Thomas Castellanos, if he could have challenged him, JRP. But he also has entered the portal, gone to Boston College. Thought being that it's JRP's job to lose, and now the competition behind him, is not the same as it was a year ago. But I'll tell you what, he's backed it up. I don't think anybody thought he would be able to do what he did in baseball. And it has certainly been a media story throughout the spring, him running from the baseball field to the spring game. ESPN.com has an article today out on their website about JRP. And he's backing it up. Now, fans won't care that he ran from the outfield to the football stadium in April when it comes along to the fall season. They want to see more downfield passing. Hey, that's what offensive coordinator Darren Henshaw has promised, right? They can pass it, but will they complete it? How will the offense change that maybe takes advantage of JRP's strengths, but also minimizes whatever weaknesses he might have. Can you hit a little bit of a shorter pass, a little bit over the middle, can he do those things with greater success and stay healthy? It's an interesting topic in the offseason. Everybody looking at that so-called backup quarterback position, because there's a thought, right? He concussion or hamstring. What are they going to do if they need to bring in QB2? There's no guarantee that he gets knocked or gets injured, but he's going to have to be smart about the way he plays too if he wants to sustain this upcoming run through the Big 12 schedule.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, one of the things I did like, or I would say I would love, was, he brought a little bit of the football attitude to the baseball team, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Boom.
and he plays a hell of a center field, and is a good igniter, getting on base and making things happen.
Well, when he gets on base, right, the speed that we saw in football, we knew about would be happening in baseball, and he's fast, and as he's had some throws from center field that makes you a little bit, ooh, what could he do on the football field with that in the fall? I think he's backed up all of the hype and being a two-sport athlete, and players like him, fans like him, coaches like him. I've had many opportunities to talk with him, both in a media setting and just in a personal setting. And, he just seems like a nice guy. I've got an opportunity to talk with his parents at baseball this season. And the guy's giving you everything you've got. Yeah, with everything he's got. Now, whether that's going to be good enough for fans, I don't know. I don't think the quarterback controversy of last year helped. It kind of hung over everything with that division in the fan base. And that certainly doesn't feel like that's the case now as we go into the summer, 100 days out. But he's going to have to back it up on the football field. Nobody's going to care what he did in baseball. When they're at Kansas, they're going to want them to come out there with a win. What do you think about that schedule? Do you see possible bowl in that, or do you think it'll be a rocky transition?
Personally, I think it's going to be a rocky transition.
Yeah.
This is not an AAC schedule. It's and you got much more travel involved in the equation, and they're going to play in some tough places. So that 6-6 would, we were talking about expectations, right? So remember a few years ago, everybody think, we're going undefeated every year. Those days are well now in our rearview mirror.
So that non-conference schedule, you got Kent State and Villanova at home.
Yep.
All right. Going to give you 2 there. They go to Boise State. That's a long road trip, but I like them coming out of that with a win. Okay. So that's 3. So now you just have to go 3-6 in the conference slate. You got Houston at home, though it's at the end of the season. How worn down will they be? They go to Cincinnati. So they bring in those 2 schools from the American, West Virginia, Texas State. Kansas, who's the weak teams?
Yeah.
who are the teams that you just look at and go, there's a win? I mean, until they go to a Kansas State, those aren't wins. They host Baylor. What makes you think that's an easy win? Again, they can go toe to toe with them for a while, but what happens when over the course of the season you have injuries? Who's the depth that you can compete? I watched a game last year, got home from a UCF game. It was one of those late games. It was BYU and Baylor, right? BYU coming into the Big 12 as well. Mm-hmm. And I watched those big guys on the line, right? The offensive and defensive lines. And I thought, oh man, I thought UCF would get killed in this game against either one of these teams right now. It just, no disrespect to the quality guys that are on those lines. And I feel like the defensive line coming back is a strong suit. They've added guys to the portal to replace some guys that are leaving on the offensive line. But you saw how UCF fared a couple seasons ago in the Boca Bowl against BYU, which is an older team, right? The makeup of BYU, these are older guys playing against 18, 19-year-olds. And, is the roster Big 12 ready? It's closer. I don't know that it's fully there. But I know Coach Malzahn has been recruiting, and he and his staff, to get it there. And UCF has been successful with the portal. So it's going to be fun making this transition, getting to know new teams and programs and fan bases. All of it to me is very exciting. Much more exciting than it was when they made the transition in those other leagues. This one, again, no disrespect to the American, which I think was a good landing spot and good home for UCF after its long, winding road through various
It was a good
divisions
arrangement,
and leagues.
Yeah.
It worked, but Oklahoma, they're playing at Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I consider that a step up from playing at Tulsa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now UCF might not like the entire state of Oklahoma after this experience, but and that's a bit about branding, right? And these are programs that we all grew up with. Oklahoma State's coming to UCF. Oklahoma State, right?
Yeah.
These are big name schools that are exciting to see now that UCF is going to be paired with.
Yeah. And you bring up a great point, because it's like, when you start to see the Big 12 logo on the field, on uniforms, and boy, it starts to hit you.
Yeah.
Whoa, this is another gear. And I also liked your analogy when you're talking about the size of players, because I remember back when we were independent and we're playing the Georgias and the Clemsons and going on all these money road trips, Nebraska and all that, and you would look at the size of our guys and the size of their guys, and they were like giants on the other side.
Well, don't quote me on this one, but I think there was an average 100-pound difference on the lines when UCF played at Nebraska in that famous game where they were hanging with Nebraska. There was something like UCF averaged 250, 260, 270 on the lines, and they were like 350 or something like that. It was just this big disparity. Again, UCF can, and you look at those games and the starters played a long time, because that drop off when you brought in the second teamers, was you couldn't compete.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I think getting those 3 wins in non-conference play and then seeing how you find 3 more. I don't want to see UCF needing 2 wins with 3 games to go if they've been worn down over the course of the season.
Yeah.
But all of it again. They're going to run the ball. Running game looks strong. Some question marks along the offensive line until you see how guys gel together. I think it was interesting, when they brought in some portal guys last year, and all the talk was, well, they need to come together. They need to gel. It's a 12-game season. I mean, if you're going to be bringing guys in the portal, that's always going to be part of it then, right? And you can't make that as an excuse. You got to come together, because you're going to be facing these teams. But all eyes will be on John Rice Plumlee. And if he is successful, then it will be a successful season, right? And if he struggles, then how are they going to get around that they may have struggles? Yeah. So all eyes will be on JRP, right? As it is with programs, it comes down to quarterback play.
Well, what I am hoping, and this is usually true when it comes to the sport of football, is that, because I'm looking at, obviously John Rice is kind of the guy there who's going to have the microscope on, but to me the guy I'm most excited to watch this year is RJ Harvey and the running back group, because I think if we can run the football successfully and kind of get back to when we had McCray and Anderson, kind of taking pressure off the quarterback, I think that would be huge in whatever success UCF has this year.
Yeah, and maybe limit how much John Rice Plumlee runs. We heard throughout spring camp, saw little glimpses of it in the spring game. Darren Hinshaw wanting the quarterbacks to stay in the pocket more and look downfield and let the play develop and not just run, which maybe was something JRP did a little bit too much of, So let's see what the evolution and the growth is of him and the success in mixing in Darren Hinshaw's offense and that touch of Gus Malzahn. Gus Malzahn is coached at the highest levels. He knows what it looks like, right? He knows what it needs to be successful. UCF has not been using the future of college football quite as much these past few months, but it still is, right? In so many ways, the opportunities through the portal, it's still a good destination. And the way they treat recruits who may not choose them now, but may come back to them later, I think that's going to be a plus for them down the line.
Yeah. And I think the other thing UCF does better than most is the marketing department. They have their stuff together. They know how to hype, and what I love is, when they do their hype videos, they put as much effort into the lower tier sports as they do football. And that excites me, because they just have a great understanding of how to market the brand.
Well, it helps, of course, when you have a young fan base, young alumni base, right, who have come of age in a social media era. So they know how to do things. They know how to drop. They know how to tease. They know how to time graphics, the quality. UCF has been a disruptor in the marketplace, right? I mean, people are still talking about the 2017 national championship. It's not even UCF that brings it up. It's every other fan base. So, right.
Yeah.
So, and space uniforms. And as much as I'm not big on the blue and the Citronaut, I know it gets a lot of play and goes viral. So I agree with you. They know how to market, and this is going to be an interesting destination for all these Big 12 fan bases, that are used to coming to maybe playing one of the bowl games in Orlando. Iowa State brings 30,000 people when they play in the Citrus Bowl, and I think that's going to be something interesting for UCF fans too. I think we'll see it in basketball. The depth of some of these fan bases, I don't think we appreciate it. There's always a couple of people from Temple, and that are at a game, but wow, Kansas. I imagine they're going to have some Kansas fans or looky-loos in Central Florida that are going to want to check out of Kansas should they be one of the teams to come to the arena this year.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, yeah, tell you what, it is an exciting time for that is for sure. So it's going to be lots to look forward to as we go through 2023 and 2024 of watching UCF begin that growth in a big time conference.
That's right.
And I hope one day we can get rid of the P5 and G5 designations. I try not to use those.
Well, the way the SEC and the Big Ten are going, it's going to be a P2 designation.
There could be some of that, and of course, obviously, the opportunities with bigger TV deals and things like that lie ahead. Just so much to look forward to.
It's exciting, right? 100 days out from the start of the season, dropping gold helmets and a little bit of buzz in late May. I think that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm ready for it. That's for sure. So it'll be good to watch it all unfold here in the very, very near future. So Trace, please make a shameless plug for your endeavors with the Sons of UCF, please.
Sons of UCF. I'm part of the weekly show, typically Thursday nights from 8 to 9. Sons of UCF Live. We stream on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and some collection of us. So we brought more of names and faces into the Sons of UCF family. We come together. We talk to players, former players, media members. We talk all things UCF from 8 to 9. And of course, Adam and Mike come together on their signature podcast on the Sons of UCF. Early in the week. You can find that wherever you get downloadable content. Give a subscription to the Sons of UCF YouTube channel. Follow my Twitter at SignPez. I'll be giving you more coverage throughout the week from the AC Baseball Championship in Clearwater when I get out there again. And always enjoy talking to you, Jeff.
Yeah, always doing the same. And of course, you're also the biggest purveyor of Seinfeld trivia out in the world of Twitter.
That I received for Christmas Seinfeld trivia, and I had made the decision. I don't know if they came together, but that I was going to rewatch the show from the beginning. So I watch one episode a night, and today begins the last season 9, episode 1. I don't know that it's going to quite time out with however many of these trivia questions I have left. And then I think my second half, the 180 episodes, which was one of the trivia questions at some point this year, the second half of the year, I haven't decided quite yet, but I think I'm going to take on Curb Your Enthusiasm and Veep in some order. Veep's got 60 some episodes. Curb's got 110, 120 some episodes, but that 180 or thereabouts would take me through the second half of the year. I'm not a binge guy where I can I'm going to stay home and watch 12 episodes of anything, but one a night over the course of the year I can do. So I'm revisiting Seinfeld in the first half of the year, and then I'm going to decide which one starts after this season 9 here in about 2 weeks.
Do you have a favorite trivia question you've put out there so far?
Do I have a favorite trivia question? I don't know if I have a favorite. Some of them, it's a mix, right? Some of them are a little bit easier. One from this week that was which character, not the main 4, Jerry, George, Kramer, and Elaine, appeared in the most episodes? And there were a lot of different answers to that. Newman was the correct answer with 47 episodes. But as one person pointed out to me, the cashier, Ruthie, appeared in, I don't remember, but a higher number than 47, 100 some odd episodes. Now, not a lot of speaking roles, and she's just at the cash register. But we see her frequently in the background. So I think it was that question from this week that stands out is interesting to me. But it's people are posting pictures and the answers are all over the place. And some purposely give wrong answers just to be funny. And it's been nice to share it with the people.
Well, I don't know if I ever told you this. So we ran through with our pets. We ran through Seinfeld names.
Ah,
yeah. So we had a Kramer. He was an Airedale Terrier mix, and he would literally kind of hit and run into the room. Like
I was just
Kramer.
gonna say, how did he run into the room?
Yeah, he was a trip. We had a Laney. We had a Jerry, and we also had it was a female cat, but we called her Georgie. So we did that. The wife would never sign off on naming a pet Newman. It's as hard as I tried because I wanted to come home and say hello, Newman.
That's funny. That's funny. That's good. That's good little trivia. You hit me with some trivia. I did not know this. I like it.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, as always, Trace, I appreciate the time and look forward to your coverage on the Sons of UCF Live and a whole lot more. And we will talk again soon down the road.
All right. Go Knights.
Charge on.